and welcome to this episode of People Are Animals Too, darn it. Today, my guests are Aimee Sadler and Aimee Grossheider from Dogs Playing for Life. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no problem. So, Aimee, you and I have known each other for quite some time because I think you've come out to our shelter at least 3 times. And then Emily and I have this really weird connection because we both went to the same high school.
I forgot about that.
We did not graduate at the same time, and neither of us are still in the same state. Emily, are you in Florida now?
No, I actually am in California, but Southern California, so it's practically a different state.
There you go. It really is. So I thought we could talk a little bit today about the general overview of what the purpose and mission of Dogs Playing for Life is, and then we kind of go from there.
Great, thank you. It's a pretty simple one. Our overall mission is to improve the quality of life for dogs that are sheltered, and when we focus on that, we end up helping to save lives too.
Great. And you originally, how long have you been doing this?
Well, I've been working specifically working with dogs in shelters in this environment since 1998.
Okay. And then you started Dogs Playing for Life when?
2015 is when the nonprofit was born.
Okay. And your model initially was to travel, right, to shelters and work with teams. Can you talk a little bit about that and then how it's kind of evolved now?
Well, actually, it originally started with me developing training and behavior programs in specific shelters. I was originally at the Southampton shelter and then at the Longmont Humane Society. And in that practice of developing the enrichment, training, and behavior modification programs there, and the success that we were having with life-saving, people are asking, what is it that you're doing? And it became a reputation pretty quickly that I was really focusing on dog-to-dog socialization. And then that is why I ended up kind of branching out and deciding to focus on sharing that and creating basically being able to do consulting for other shelters and showing them how to get started and doing what we were doing. And that was in 2015. When we started bouncing around and working with shelters, it was interesting. So we've been to over 280 shelters now at this point, and it's just really evolved into, I think the first shelter that told me something similar to the experience that you had, that this wasn't just great for the dogs, but it was great for the staff, was the Animal Rescue League of Boston. And they were the first ones that said that their staff came in and were excited to go to work and get to be on the playgroup rotation that day. And that was the first I'd heard of that part. I mean, I love helping people, but I didn't expect that necessarily, but it's interesting how that's become a part of it. And then depending upon the shelter and what they need, it is interesting how much we end up operationally involved in so many different things. So we come in to introduce playgroups, but it almost becomes a house of cards at that point, and all the different aspects of the shelter's operations on behalf of their dogs that we can end up touching. And that's been really, really rewarding and interesting as it's evolved.
I had a similar experience when I was working at a shelter too, where the people, playgroups created such a sense of team because people relied on each other. And so I think that helped with that satisfaction and camaraderie. And I mean, it stands to reason that if the dogs are happier, if we see less suffering in the animals that we're serving, that we'll be a little bit happier showing up to work too. And so I think that that's one of my favorite kind of unintended benefits that we see time and time again, is that people, they see so much more purpose in their work because they really see a proactive ability to help animals while they're still with them, not even just help them out the door, but that's a nice byproduct. So that's my favorite unintended benefit by far.
Yeah, there's an enrichment there that happens that even though the enrichment is supposed to be meant for the dogs, I know with our team, we saw it immediately. People were more excited about their work. You're teaching them something. They're learning a skill that they didn't know before. You're empowering them because you do some work on, it's not like a primary function of your purpose is to teach people about how to properly break up a dog fight, and just that piece of knowledge really helps people feel empowered that if it does happen, at least I know how to respond. And then seeing
especially when they're
outcomes.
Especially when they're the executive director and they come hauling out of their office in their high heels, like some executive directors that I know.
Haven't done that. I moved my office, so now I know. And then actually you taught me too that just the human nature side of things, that here we are and we'd invested all this money for you to come out, you've been there, and then there's a fight, we have a fight, and all these people are standing around literally staring, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, get your finger out of your nose and go help. And and then some people dove in and some people didn't, and afterwards I'm like, okay, what is going on? And you said there's a natural, the fight or flight, and that some people are going to dive in and other people literally just freeze. So I guess I'm a diver in. I'm a diver inner.
In heels.
In heels. Pink heels. I have a video of us doing it in the meet and greet room where we had an incident, and I have these pink faux leather heels on.
That's so funny. I can't walk normally in heels. I definitely don't think I could break up a dog fight in heels.
Actually, one of my favorite stories about when you were at our shelter, and I have it on video, is when you had us, I think were the bad dog, and then like the aggressor, and then there was the other dog, and you acted it out, and then Ken was one of our older volunteers, like attacks you.
Yeah. I said people have a kick out of playing that game too. Yeah. It helps when if people kind of freeze up and they don't know what to do, and then we go through that little ritual and people have a good time with it.
Yeah.
I think, didn't somebody squirt somebody else with a hose or something? That was another thing that we
Yeah, we had. It was really funny. We had a lot of
And then
fun.
I said, I don't advise that. That's not what we teach. You're not allowed to squirt me with a hose.
Yeah, the bucket of water over the head.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing now? Like you have a facility now.
We do. We were privileged at the end of 2017, we were donated 13 plus acres and this beautiful turnkey kennel facility with a front building adoption center with a bunch of real life rooms. And it's just an amazing piece of property in North Central Florida. And we are working with dogs that are at risk of euthanasia for behavior, and only for shelter dogs. We don't work with privately owned dogs. We only work with shelter dogs. And it was uncanny timing, but literally a week after we had received the property, one of our clients is Dogtails Animal Sanctuary and Rescue in Canada, and we'd been working with them. And they told us that they were fighting a legal case for the Save the 21 Ontario dogs, this campaign. There's a dog fight bust, and a number of the dogs the courts had been petitioned to euthanize the dogs because they hadn't done well on initial behavioral assessments, and this particular group was fighting for them. But they were in Ontario, and there's a breed ban. So if they did win custody, they were going to have to ensure that they had a place that they could go, that they wouldn't be able to keep them at their own sanctuary. So they had asked me if I would be able to take the dogs, and I said, well, I'm being told that this place is going to be donated, but I can't really believe that that's going to happen. And a week before they won custody, the paperwork was signed over to us for the property. So it was really this uncanny timing. I probably would have been sitting dormant for a while. I don't know if I would have had the means to get it up and running at that time, but because he had that population and we were basically contracted by him to work with those dogs for the first year. And so it was pretty, I guess, meant to be all the way around.
That's awesome. And do shelters send animals to you from all over? How does that work?
Yes, they do right now from all over the country, because we only have the one facility in Florida. We're envisioning that down the road we'd be able to have these strategically placed around the country where there's the biggest need. It's not that practical that we're moving dogs back and forth from Florida to California, but we have a couple of partners there. But we don't intend for that to, we'd like them to be regionally placed. But yes, shelters can send dogs to us. They send them send us all the history. We make a determination if we think that we can help them. Our main mission at the center is also to provide quality of life. So there's been a couple of cases that we've taken in where same kind of thing, the dogs were being held for a court case, but they were already designated as either dangerous or something to that effect. And so but the staff was heartbroken because they'd actually found the dogs to be quite easy to care for. And so we've taken them in so that they could have a better quality of life instead of being a year in a kennel and then going straight to being euthanized. And one of them came in and he was so amazing. We literally couldn't get him to do anything wrong. And so we're really grateful that Best Friends took him. So ultimately we thought we were just going to show him a good time, and we were able to, Best Friends took him on. So that was fantastic. But quality of life is still our mission here too. But I'm happy to say, better than we expected. We have so far, since we've opened, we've served, I think it was 181 dogs. I just looked at this, from 29 different organizations, and we have an 89% save rate so far, which I was hoping for about 50%, with the level of behavior challenges we're willing to take. So we're pretty proud of it.
Do you still go in? Do you have a team that goes into shelters?
Yes, that's it. All of our programming that we've always provided is completely running and intact. And thanks to Animal Farm Foundation and Petco Foundation and the ASPCA, they're partnered and have been providing grants to organizations, and we're allowed to, the ASPCA and Petco fund us to go into municipal open admission shelters. So that was running strong until COVID, of course. So like the rest of us, those operations have been stalled because of that, but that's all still going on, still going on. We all have to wait to see what our new norms will be. Yes, our team rotates, my trainers are on the ground working with shelters under normal circumstances, or they're rotating in to the Florida facility. We do have a couple of local trainers, but then we also have the trainers that are running around, they cycle through too. I'll let you talk about what you think is going to happen with COVID. I think for DPFL, we're just waiting to feel like we can safely start sending people out and about again. In the meantime, like everybody, we're creating our own new norms. So our handlers and our trainers that can't be on the ground right now have been working tirelessly on an enormous video learning library that we intend to roll out and share with shelters as a resource, a video library. So that's been huge. So I do think we're all going to learn how to function this way a lot more. So DPFL will have its own version of that as well, and being able to provide support that way as best as we can. And then we'll get people on the ground as soon as we can. The Canine Center, like all shelters, we are functioning like everybody else. We've got a population of animals that are there, so it's essential duties. So that feels pretty similar. And the new thing for us is we're looking to raise money to get a small RV so that we can have our own self-contained transports. That's probably the biggest change for us, so that we can continue having dogs come in and out of the Canine Center, because it's just small transports for ourselves, and that we'll try to manage that piece so that we're not handicapped by not being able to be supported in the transports. And what do you see? What's going to happen to all of us in animal welfare? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, I think obviously our world has a lot to do with behavior. And so I think that, being forced to stay home is different for people, and it's different for animals too. And so the interesting thing about our organization is that we're so focused on that basic enrichment and quality of life, but our team really does have the skill set to do everything from the very basics to the very most advanced skills that there are for shelter dogs. And so I think that what I see for animal welfare is an exciting shift where we are focusing a lot on foster, but from our experience, there's some dogs that still fall through the cracks with a robust foster program that still need a little extra support. So whether that is in a more advanced foster home that DPFL could support foster families, or if it's the dogs who do end up remaining in a much smaller shelter population, they will absolutely have the resources and the backing of DPFL. And so I think that that's something I see as a potential really exciting thing to come from, kind of this shift in animal welfare where our communities are so much apart. Our shelters have actually really become what they were intended, what we've hoped for them to be, which is this community center that brings people in and they can, kind of take on the burden of the animals that need the help. And I think that those resources are stretched a lot further for the behavioral health of the dogs than when there's a smaller population. So that's really exciting to see and to hope for.
I think it's hard for us to recognize sometimes that we know that our shelters are designed to be helping the animals, and that we all know that we want being with us to be a temporary stop, and that they don't necessarily know or understand that. And I think the recognition, I think we're all going to be, it's going to be much more clear to all of us how much of a negative impact being in our shelter by itself can have on so many animals. And so I think in the past, the animals have been burdened or labeled with being the problem. And I think that hopefully this will really reveal how much the animals aren't necessarily the problem when we send them in foster homes and they say that, oh, they're fine. And we thought that they were so problematic and they were so barrier reactive in the kennel. And I hope that we understand that it's the way that we've had to keep them all this time that was really primarily where the problem started. And so I think that hopefully we never turn back from this, all the people that have signed up to bring the dogs and the animals, all the animals into their homes and for fostering. I'm a little scared that when everybody goes back to work, I hope that we're all thinking ahead about, are we going to have an influx that comes back in, and will we be prepared for that? But hopefully, as you're saying, to this kind of community, new level of engagement, hopefully we can share with the community how we can balance that well, so the shelters just don't end up like, okay, here you go, now you take them all back. And hopefully we can resolve that and find a new norm that includes that transition. If there needs to be a transition, maybe I'm wrong and that won't happen, but hopefully we'll get through that smoothly. Even for us, for ourselves at the Canine Center, our biggest objective now is really focusing on tightening up the programming so that we are lowering our average length of stay. I mean, we're really striving for that. So even in an advanced program, we can show that 90 days is like the outside, right? And so what we really want to prevent are shelters moving on past this, still sitting on dogs for years. And that just breaks my heart. Just breaks my heart. And then the role that we want to fulfill is that when in doubt, when the dog hasn't done something wrong that basically gives the answer to you, for you, obviously, but you have concerns, that's when we really want to be there to support shelters so that they don't feel like they have to, so that we have a place with a level of expertise that can assess the dogs and put them through the paces and help to reveal, is this dog a placement candidate or not? I mean, we don't want adoption centers having to face that alone.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think that it's the human condition to be plagued by the idea that we just don't know. And I think that the more of us that can almost feel empowered by that and say, we don't know, and that's okay, and we're going to do the best we can with what we do know. But at the end of the day, we could be wrong, and being okay with being proven wrong. While of course, obviously our primary objective in sheltering as well is to keep the public safe, but to do so and to understand that we don't have the silver bullet. We just don't, and that is our reality. And so that makes things more challenging, but kind of also a lot more exciting too. That it's fluid, and that, I mean, gosh, if I was judged based on the standardized testing that I did in high school, you would know nothing about me at all. Nothing. And it's silly to think of that. And so I think about all these dogs that you get to know, the dogs that we're privileged to get to know, and think, man, if this dog were to go through a behavior assessment, what would we come out with? And what would I come out with versus what would Mandy come out with, which was what would Aimee come out with? And that's always been the challenge to them in general. And so again, I think empowering and taking the, we don't know, and that's okay. And that we're still going to do the best we can.
And I think that that's a huge part of the work that we do too. We have adoption follow-up services that we provide to dogs, to the dogs that we've placed around the country. We're still there because we know that we are expanding the threshold of the kinds of dogs that were considered standard placement candidates. And if we're willing to work with those behaviors and families are willing to say, okay, the dog is coming in with training and I'm going to give this dog a shot, then we will stand by that and we will help you out and we will work with the dog. So, I mean, there's just these new norms all the way around that where are we going to put our resources to do the work well? But it doesn't mean that we know, as soon as we change relationship and as soon as we change environment, we know that different behavioral pictures can emerge. So I'm really proud to say, to Emily's point, that the longer I am in this business, the quicker I'm going to say, I have no freaking idea what's going to happen until you have the dog at home. And if anything is not working well, we are right here and we'll be there.